Welcome to Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science. I'm your host, GV Pawan Kumar. It is my absolute pleasure and delight to welcome the guest on this particular episode, Professor Debarati Chatterjee. Debarati actually is donning many hats. One is of the professor at IUCAA Pune, where she actually looks at the cutting edge aspect of understanding compact stars and gravitational wave science. And she has been also on various international bodies and collaborations, which she not only is an active participant of, but also is the current chair of education and public outreach of LIGO India, which is a mega science project, as many of you would be aware of it. Debbie is also a very active science communicator. She has been a very important part of an initiative called as Pint of Science, which many of you probably would be aware of. And she is the director of that particular kind of initiative, and has taken some outstanding steps, and which is also part of this particular discussion. Hopefully, we'll get to know more about it. And one of the amazing parts which I learned as I was researching about Debbie is that she is well versed in various languages, of course, including English, Bengali, which is her mother tongue, I assume, and French, German, Hindi, Spanish, Brazilian, Portuguese. That's actually quite a lot of languages. And she is an expert in analytical and numerical modeling of compact objects in astrophysics and emission of gravitational waves. To be very specific, her own research interest has been in developing global models which take into account both the microscopic aspect and the macroscopic aspect consistently in order to improve the astrophysical simulations and for a better interpretation of multi-messenger astrophysical observations. And it has been actually great to know Devi over the last few months, where I also actually interacted with her a couple of times. And I'm excited to really learn more about her work and also her initiatives in science communication. Welcome to Pratidwani, Devi.
Thank you so much. Thanks. It's a great pleasure to connect with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. So we'll start with your origins. Just give us a gist of your origins, where were you born, and what kind of education you had.
So I was born in Kolkata. I'm Bengali. I traveled quite a few places already as my dad was shifting jobs. So early on in my childhood, I got kind of used to adapting to different environments. And also learning languages, because when you're traveling, you have different pools of friends who speak different languages, and you get exposed to different cultures. And as I was going through school, I think I already I was lucky to have an exposure to different things, different activities and interests. So yeah, I became more and more curious. I went to modern high school in Kolkata, where also luckily I was introduced to many things. Even as a school student, I was introduced to trekking and hiking and camping and stuff which go beyond academia. We had to participate in lots of inter-school activities. There was a lot of importance for arts and performing arts and debates and stuff. So I think I got a very good exposure, which actually helped later in science communication. So
Wonderful,
yeah.
wonderful.
I
That's
did a
the
bachelor's in Calcutta as well, so St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. Then I went to Science College, which is Calcutta University, for my master's. So I was a gold medalist, so in physics in that year. So then I went to do my PhD at Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics in theoretical astrophysics. Yeah, I think this is about the early part
part of
of
the yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So one of the key aspects I would want to also learn a little bit more is is there any specific kind of interaction you had, especially during your school years, which really motivated you to take science forward? Specifically, let's say your own peer group, or it can be even your teachers or some people around you.
I think in general, like also from my family, my parents were both from scientific background, like not scientists, but they studied chemistry. They did introduce me to, the lovely book culture, and, taking me to science museums and stuff, which of
Mhm.
course grew a scientific interest. And in my school, I would not say like, I would say we were not motivated particularly for anything. What my school did great was to introduce me, to make me curious about almost everything, which I think is great. And I think it was more during my bachelor's, when I was, thinking of different, career options. And this is when, luckily, I there was one professor who motivated me to take up a summer school. He
Mhm.
said, you should take up a summer school. If you're interested in astrophysics, you should take up a summer school and see what research is like. So I luckily got a fellowship, the JNCASR fellowship, to go
Uh-huh.
to Indian Institute of Astrophysics. And this is the first time I was introduced to this research culture. And it was about solar physics, interpretation of observations.
Mhm.
By the end of the fellowship, I knew I did not want to do that. But but what I absolutely loved was this academic environment. People, it was, everything was flexi time. People would like wake up at any hour they want. We would play badminton till like 3 a.m. at night. And like, this was the first time I had so much freedom during my bachelor's. I started getting my own fellowship, which is like, it's my money.
Mm.
And I was free to travel. So I started traveling, like, backpacking. And I could go to observatories. I went to Venu Bappu Observatory all by myself.
Wow.
So yeah, and
That's
this
well,
was
yeah.
like, I was so excited about all these things that I think this is the time when I decided that research life is for me. I love that. I mean, I think I'm a person who cannot really work under a boss or in that like 9 to 5 environment. And I thought this is my calling. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I also did my summer in Indian Institute of Astrophysics
Oh,
long time ago.
wow.
It just reminded me of my own experience, and
Right.
it's a great institution in terms of actually encouraging people to do a lot of interesting things. Although I
Right.
did not get an opportunity to visit the OT
I,
telescope, although I heard a lot about that and very interesting things. So, which means that you also had an exposure to astrophysics at an early age, right? Because
that's
that is
right.
an important part of your upbringing, I suppose.
Also, I would say whenever I wanted to attend some public events, my parents always encouraged that. I remember attending some public talks from Nobel laureates who were visiting Kolkata. I remember going to some public outreach events. Like, there was one amazing event at the Birla Planetarium, which was
Mm-hmm.
about black hole astrophysics, and I was just in high school. And I remember there were some amazing talks, like under 3 minutes, explaining in different terms what black holes are, and I was fascinated by it. So I think public outreach definitely played a role. Yeah, and books as well, of course.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
so many nice science fiction books, and science, like, explainers that definitely caught my attention. And also, like, these concepts of space time and
Mm.
quantum mechanics, they literally grew on me, and I was more and more fascinated by them.
Fabulous, fabulous. In fact, I keep telling this, in fact, in many conversations too, that probably one of the biggest contributions to physics has been via astrophysics. Not only in, of course, bringing out so many interesting concepts in the pursuit of understanding nature, but also bringing people into science. That is an underestimated part of the contribution of astronomy and astrophysics. I am for one sure one of the persons who is doing science mainly because I really got motivated by studying astrophysics and optics and other things, and that is one of the key elements which is so important, right? Devi? Because you also look at this kind of public aspect of communicating science, and you also clearly mentioned that that played a critical role for you to also develop interest in it. How was your schooling, and what kind of exposure you had? Especially, I'm interested in your own scholarly kind of evolution. Were you already interested in specific aspects of astrophysics apart from, let's say, the science which you actually learned in outside the classroom?
Um, So I would say I am just basically a very curious person. And even now, I mean, my interests go way beyond astrophysics
Mhm.
or physics in general. So I think I started off, in fact, when I was in junior school, my interest was more towards genetics. Like there was,
Oh.
I mean, I think it comes from, what you read in the newspapers at that time. Genetics was really very, like, had a lot of interesting research happening. I was absolutely fascinated by that. Astrophysics in general as well, and archaeology. You won't believe it. I'm like
Wow.
very like history is something I
Mm,
really like very much. So I was interested in all these things, and I was trying to think of, like, what is one branch of like academics that I can take up, that I can decide later what to do.
mm,
And this is the point when I decided that physics would actually allow me to do anything, any of this. I mean, I could actually, like, later on see whether, you can do physics and still do genetics, or you can do even forensics. I was so excited about that. And, so physics actually opens, physics is something really that tries to explain the universe, and you can actually go into any branch. So I started by enrolling into bachelor's in physics for the same reason. And then I got captivated by the beauty of physics itself.
mhm,
When
mhm.
I started learning about quantum mechanics, I was like fascinated, and more by the fact that how much and how little we know about it. And already, like, it's so baffling. And I totally got, fell in love with physics itself. And then I thought that, okay. And then, of course, astrophysics is something which inspires us all. Also,
Mm.
growing up in different places, there were places I lived in which would be far outside the city, with low light pollution and with, like,
Yes.
sky full of stars. And I would spend nights with my mom doing stargazing, looking at meteors and comets and stuff. And of course, like, that is something I think we are all fascinated about. So yeah, I think, yeah, slowly this is how I got into astrophysics. And yeah.
Fascinating, fascinating. What were there any specific books which also influenced you during that time, especially during your formative years in terms of transition to college? Because that is the time where you kind of get used to a little bit more at a higher level.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Mm,
So I think, so I remember in college, like the first year, one of the professors told us, like, you have to get outside the library that you got in college and go and read widely. You should
mhm,
enroll yourself. So I went and enrolled myself to British Council Library in Kolkata. At that time, it was actually a much bigger library than it is now.
mhm, mm.
And there was a beautiful coffee house right next to it, like part of it, in the garden. And I remember sitting and reading and about all these different books, and especially Stephen Hawking's books. And I think there were many books. I really cannot name one or two, but there were so many different books. Um, yeah, and I don't think I can name like
Maybe, yeah, yeah,
two,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, once.
Yeah, such an important part of it because these public libraries do play a very critical role, and
Right.
it's also one of the very nice ways to make education informal and yet attract people to slightly more kind of scholarly
Yeah.
kind of exposure to a lot of literature. Kolkata is also a great city for art and every aspect of art to whatever exposure I have got. Literally, it is not only just a city of joy, but also quite a lot of interesting aspects of poetry or drama and many
Yes.
many things which happen. I know that you also have that interest in arts, including dance and other aspects of it. Were you also interested in those things as you were growing up?
Yes, that's true. So, like I mentioned, so our school also, like, motivated us to take up different things. There were actually activities that we were like, not only encouraged, but we were actually forced to do. Like, we
Mm.
would actually have to sign up for some of these things. So I did classical dance. I did Bharatanatyam as a child, and I participated in many activities. So even like I was part of this Duke of Edinburgh scheme, which
Mm.
asked us to go, hiking, which was part of the curriculum. And in the beginning, my parents were very wary about sending me off to the mountains because we were sent to Darjeeling for camping.
Oh,
And
okay.
we did have crazy adventures. So I was only 14 years old. This was the first time my parents were actually sending me away like that. And not only that, we did have terribly bad weather. Like during the camp, our tents were flooded. It had to be evacuated in the middle of the night. So a lot of things happened We came back safe, but it changed my life
Mm,
because
mm.
as a child I was actually asthmatic. So
Okay.
because of asthma, I was not allowed to do many sports.
Mm,
I could not stay out in the field for running and stuff. I was good in hurdles. I wanted to do more sport, but somehow that's why I got confined to indoor sport and
mm,
also not very cardio sports because of my condition. But funnily, when I went to the mountains, so first time in the Himalayas, like seeing the Kanchenjunga, and at that time I realized that I did not. I mean, in those days there was hardly any air pollution in the
mm,
mountains,
mm,
and when I went out in the mountains, I realized that I don't have any breathing problem. I could go far ahead fast, walking and hiking. And it completely changed my life. After that, I never gave up the mountains because I'm fascinated by them. And I kept on doing like high altitude treks and stuff. And also, I realized that it was like magic for me. Like every time I was stressed, I would just disappear in the mountains and come back rejuvenated. So, yeah, so I think all these activities definitely motivated me. I went on even after that during my bachelor's and master's. I enrolled in Birla Academy for
mm.
training in fine arts.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, so I still paint and I still do urban sketching, and I continue to do that even and of course, when I moved to Europe, I also did many of these activities
Mm.
and, and I continue to do them. Yeah, I think I'm just passionate
Fabulous.
about it.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, you also probably had a very kind of early exposure to a lot of research ecosystem. If I understand correctly, if you are in science college, which if I'm correct, it's Raja Bazar Science College.
Raja
That's the
Bazar
one.
Science
That's
College.
the
Yeah,
very famous.
yeah,
Because right from Raman to so many people actually have had kind of privilege to do their work there.
yeah.
It's kind of seeped in history. That is another important point. Were you also exposed to some very interesting aspects related to physics? What really brought you into physics? Because college is a time where you probably gravitate both figuratively and and metaphorically towards physics. And is there a specific kind of exposure you got during your college years which motivated you towards physics per se?
So I think during my bachelor's, like I said, I was still open to exploring different things, and I did the summer school, which also like showed me the great side of academia and academic life. Then during my master's, actually my grades during my bachelor's were quite moderate, so
Mm,
I did not do very well, even because I think like even the way the things were taught. I mean, I think there were a lot of differences between how the curriculum was set up and what we
mm,
were actually taught in class. So I was kind of like still very lost.
mm.
And then when I went to science college in for doing my master's, I would say that was really the turning point
Turning point.
because
Mm,
I was really lucky to have some of the best ever professors. And their classes were like a journey. I got so absorbed into them. We had like I remember it was Professor Amitabh Rai Chaudhuri, who
mhm.
taught us ARC. So he
The
taught
very
us.
famous ARC.
Yeah, that's right. His lectures were, yeah. I mean, it was really like a journey. The way he set up the tools, and I remember that I quickly became his favorite because sometimes I would end up getting the conclusions even before the he reached the end in the class because I was so excited about everything. And sometimes I would even pick his mistakes, which he was actually proud about, that
Okay,
I
nice.
would be able to do that on my own because he literally made us think, and we would come up with our own solutions. And that is something within theoretical physics which gives you confidence, right?
Confidence.
Confidence in your own calculations, confidence in your own derivation. So I think that is what I developed there. The real analytical skill, I think I developed during my master's. And luckily, I got very, very good professors like PRCP Rai Chaudhuri, who taught us crystallography. I was amazed by the
Mhm.
lectures. And yeah, Soumitra Sengupta, who taught us
Mm,
quantum theory. So I think this was also a turning point because it made me really, really strong in theoretical physics and
mhm, mhm.
some in very complicated topics like whether it was general relativity, particle physics, and yeah, quantum field theory. So these are complicated topics, and
Yeah.
once you've mastered them, so when I came out of my doing my master's and getting a gold medal, I was confident that I could take up theoretical physics and approach some real life problems. So I think that really was a turning point in my life, getting confidence.
Superb, superb. Yeah, in fact, there is something which is always in the air in that place. I've found that so many of the people who have graduated from that college, not only from your own era, but even prior to that, have
Yes.
such a very rich memory of being, exposed to some very profound aspects of physics. It
Yeah.
is evident not only in the fact that they have went on to do very good work, like you have also, but also becoming very good ambassadors for science.
I want to make a comment since you love optics.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please, please.
Yeah, so I want to tell you an anecdote. So I just want to say, like, it was also an enlightenment on how well you can teach with such modest amenities.
I mean,
You have seen the buildings, like they are very
yeah.
modest. I remember once we were doing an optics experiment with something with piezoelectric crystals and something, but I don't remember exactly. But I remember that on after doing the experiment, the conclusions led us to get a value of whatever we were measuring to be way off from what we were
Mm,
expecting
mm,
theoretically. Okay, so we were sure that the apparatus was not working, whether whatever the detector was. So we went up and told, it was Professor B. Bagchi's class, and we said, Sir, we have realized that this is not working. The apparatus is not working. So this experiment cannot be done. So he said, how did you come to this conclusion? So we said, oh, we have this, and these are the theoretically expected values. He said, if you don't have the theoretically expected values, how would you tell that this is wrong? So that got us
nice.
thinking, okay? We were
Mm,
like, wow. So he taught us how to approach it in a research way, like sometimes you don't have the answers given out, right? So how would you, so he told us, go figure out, and go figure out also by how much you are wrong.
mm, mm.
So that was, I still remember that example because this is really literally how I tell my students as well now. The answers are not given by the universe when you step into research. So that is what, I mean, these are just some examples to say that even with the wrong apparatus, you can teach right physics.
I can't agree more. I can't agree more because that is such an important lesson and such a nice thing also that you shared. Because without that perspective, you would not be able to also anchor your philosophy of doing science, right? Because it otherwise it just becomes reacting to a problem in a book kind of a situation, and it's such an important point what you brought up. That's very nice. Uh, this means that you also have this strong urge to go into research now that you got exposed to physics at this juncture of your career. Were you always thinking about going into research because you probably had other avenues also to take up?
I like I said, I'm not. I mean, like if you know my personality, I'm not somebody who can stick to 9 to 5 rules. I'm somebody who's always bending rules, and people who work with me know me very well. So, yeah, I think like as soon as I saw the perks of this kind of a career, I was very much attracted to it. So just
Yeah.
to be sure, I enrolled in another master's program in Science
Mm,
Institute of Nuclear Physics, and this time it was on neutrino oscillations.
mm,
I did not learn really much from it. It was a reading project, but basically, again, I got access into Science Institute,
mm.
and
Yeah, yeah.
it's very difficult to get. It's a DAE institute, so
Yes,
it's a
yes,
privilege
yeah.
to enter the doors of that institute and interact with the professors there. I would, chat with them about current problems. I would sit in the library and this and that. And then I think I was convinced that this is something I want to do. And even before I appeared for my master's exam, I gave the entrance exam for Science Institute and
Mm.
theoretical and the interviews. And I was already selected before I even did my master exam. So I didn't even, it's really funny because I did not give a second exam. I just, that's it. It was in Kolkata and close to my parents, and
Yeah.
I just went there.
No, no, it's actually, in a way, this is, I'll of course come to the part where you get into the institution, but this junction and the thing what you mentioned is a very important point, right? Because, doing science becomes part of your life. And second point is also there is an element of convenience which is also equally important. In fact, sometimes people don't realize that how important that aspect is to
Right.
have a seamless way of actually doing science,
Right.
where you don't have to really sometimes look for other options as long as you're confident and you're able to actually think that's something you'd want to do. And here is another example which you just mentioned. That is good to know that
I
actually.
do mention this a lot because, a lot of young students come to me for mentoring,
Yes,
and
yes.
especially these days, and they ask me questions like, "Oh, we are bachelor students. I'm
Mm,
enrolling in this master's program abroad, or for PhD, and they are sending like hundreds of applications abroad." And I told them like, "See, everybody has their own path,
mm.
but I would say that really in the end, it does not matter. I know brilliant, brilliant scientists in India who have never even stepped outside their hometown."
Yes,
And there are people who have been all over the world. So I think it's up to you where you work comfortably and what brings out the best in you. Yeah, so I think in every point of your career, I think. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
tell them the same thing. I mean, I did not have like, a PhD with an illustrious person like a Nobel laureate. No, I did not have that. But yeah, I think I am happy with the PhD I started with.
Absolutely fantastic. So, could you just define to us the kind of questions you were interested in, Debbie, during that particular time, especially when you were getting started with your PhD problem, and also the kind of questions you were broadly interested in during that time, because that
Yeah.
probably would connect to some specific aspects what you went on to do for that.
True, true. So I forgot to mention one thing. So another thing that really motivated me why I went to do this PhD was that during my master's, I went to a school which was organized by Astrosat, and this was
Oh,
about neutron star physics. And the this was in TIFR,
mhm.
also an amazing campus. I think one of the reasons I loved academic life was because these beautiful campuses all over
Campuses.
India. This is really it's amazing. Yeah. So I went to TIFR. I was like, wow. As a student, I was like amazed with the beautiful campus. And then the workshop, like the school, it was a school about different aspects of neutron stars, theory and observations. And I fell in love with neutron stars. And of course, you have to ask who were the people teaching
Mm.
it. Professor Dipankar Bhattacharya, Professor Pranav Ghosh, Ajit Kembhavi. So all
Kimberly, yes, yeah.
people, yeah, I mean, they are amazing physicists, and the way they are good teachers, I mean, the way they taught the subject, I had already a great grasp of what, it was all about, what are the open problems and everything. And also, I was fascinated by how multidisciplinary these topics are. I mean, literally, I have worked for so many years on neutron stars and I never got bored of it. I mean, I am also a person who doesn't like to do something monotonous and
Mm,
I
yeah.
need variety. So I have worked on many, many aspects of neutron stars and I think you can continue to do that forever. Like there's nuclear aspects, there are
Mm,
particle physics aspects, there's condensed matter, then there's theory, simulations, observations. You can do infinite amount of things, and everything is like it is as complicated as it is simple, and it is very beautiful. So I think that is what led me to go into this. And when I went to Science Institute, I talked to different people and I said, I want to do neutron star physics, can you suggest me something? And this is the point when I was introduced to this, and also the open problems in gravitational wave astrophysics. And I
mhm.
think that was, yeah, what got me into this field.
Into the field. Nice. So, specifically, any particular question you were looking at, like any specific aspect of, let's say, the neutron star or the gravitational physics, which you were interested in, and what is the kind of question you asked during your PhD?
Yeah, so what we asked was that, well, since neutron stars are such complicated objects to model because they span so many orders of magnitude in density and they span from nuclear physics to particle physics for their description. So the question was that if you have these different kind of composition, how could that affect the observations? Like, if you are looking at multi-wavelength telescopes, or if you are looking at gravitational waves, would
Mhm.
that contain a signature of its interior composition? So that is what got me interested, and this is what I worked on during my PhD.
Yes.
Particularly, like we have earthquakes, you can have these oscillations, or
Mhm.
like
Mm.
quakes in a star, in the neutron star, and these contain information about its interior composition and properties. So that's something called astroseismology. So this is what I did during my PhD. And also now many of my students in my group are working on similar topics, because there's, I mean, a lot of information there. And funnily, at that time, gravitational waves were not yet detected.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, now that we have detected them, there's even more excitement about it. But
Makes
yeah.
sense. Fabulous. You also work kind of very elaborately on simulation aspects of it, which means that you would also have to bring in the theoretical and the computational aspect to your work. So it's a very fascinating area to think about the universe through a computer, so to speak. And I know myself that there are so many interesting ways in which you can model systems because to take a very complex system and also very elaborate system like astrophysical bodies, and then try to kind of straight jacket them into a particular compact aspect of physics is a very challenging task, because the kind of approximations one has to actually go through is quite complex. So what are the kind of things you got exposed to during that time? Were there any particular aspects of computational physics which you also had to develop as part of your own repertoire? Or
Right, right. So, I actually did different things during my PhD and also during my postdoc. Luckily, I got exposure to many different aspects of neutron star physics. So, like I said, so I was working on more analytical, semi-analytical stuff
mm,
during my PhD. Then, when I went to during my first postdoc, so I was a Humboldt fellow. So I got the
yes.
Humboldt fellowship and I went to Heidelberg. So during this time, I was in the Institute for Theoretical Physics. And there it was completely theoretical, but I was lucky to, have like very great minds around me. And I was
Mm,
learning a lot about different scales of, physics and, I mean, from heavy ion collisions to particle physics and, accelerators and nuclear physics. So all these things. And this also like really motivated me. So at that time, I looked deep into, aspects of whether what you learn from heavy ion physics and how you can incorporate them into neutron star physics, all these different aspects. So I published some papers at that time. They were very highly cited. Like I was excited. My first papers got like more than 400 citations. So I was very
nice.
happy. Then again,
Hyperon puzzle, right? The puzzle,
that's right.
the
Yeah, exactly.
hyperon
The Hyperon
puzzle.
puzzle. Yeah. So there, yeah, exactly. So that was what I was working on. Then I went on. So I mean, I was looking for a second postdoc, but so for a brief period, about 9 months, I think, I was in Frankfurt,
Mm,
Frankfurt Institute of Advanced Studies, where with Professor Stefan Schramm, I was working on a problem, and we also looked for grants
mm.
to do molecular dynamic simulations of the crust. So this is when
Nice.
I started to do my own simulations,
Simulations, yeah.
but we did not get the funding. So I got the offer to go to Paris Observatory at this time. So I moved to France. And in Paris Observatory, the group was, I mean, I was very motivated to always work in with the interests of the group, right? I mean,
Yeah.
of course, you can sit in your own office and do your own things, but I was curious to learn what's happening there. So there were like, luminaries who were
Mm,
working, who had introduced, like aspects of how to model mergers and gravitational physics and stuff. So I mean, there are a lot of people there, like Professor Silvano Bonazzola, Eric
mm,
Bourguignon, who worked on like, the numerical, they are mathematicians actually.
mm.
So primarily mathematicians there, French mathematicians are very well known.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so their group was looking at everything from the mathematical point of view, trying to model this numerically. In fact, one of the first black hole visualizations was also done in that group by Jean-Pierre Luminet. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
So it was a fantastic group, and there I got interested also in simulations. So I
Mm,
was working on like some codes which looked at general relativistic magnetohydrodynamics codes. Static and dynamical. So what
Mm,
happens when you're, there's a collision of neutron stars or black holes, what kind of, signals you generate. So I got interested into this aspect.
mm,
I learned a lot, but I also learned how difficult it would be to set up my own simulation,
mm,
because these groups actually literally have 20 plus years of experience setting up step by step. And there's a lot of work that goes on
mm.
in that. So here, when I am working in IUCAA, I did not really develop our own code. What we do more is, even for astroseismology, we do solve numerically
Numerically.
oscillation modes, or in a semi-analytical way. But what our interest is more is to model from interior to exterior, like from the microphysical to macrophysical aspects within a consistent formalism. We do not do heavy numerical GRMHD simulations.
Mm,
I
mm.
mean, I could do that, but what we do is maybe work in collaboration with people I have
People,
already
yeah,
worked.
yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Uh, one of the great aspect of being in Europe is, of course, the rich scientific history, but also the way they do science,
True.
which is something which I have also got a bit of exposure during my postdoc years. But I see that you have spent a lot of years in France and also in Germany, uh, which probably has also influenced the way you think about science.
True.
And I also am aware of the fact that you are conversant in those languages too, which is actually quite remarkable aspect. In fact, if you know three languages apart from the English in Europe, it's actually highly sorted off. And you know French, Spanish, and German a little bit, which is quite
Actually,
remarkable.
I know more languages actually, but I am not as fluent in them. So I
Okay.
do not list them, but I can
Yeah,
also speak
yeah.
some Italian and all that, but okay.
That's amazing. That's amazing because I'm saying this not only because it's not like you have only been exposed to a basic conversational aspect. I see that you've also given talks and done podcasts in French. This is kind of amazing. But how did you really pick it up? Because that is something remarkable. Because learning languages is always a very important part of gelling with the culture, and that's a great way to really get into part of a group of people and really understand them. That's actually requires quite a lot of skill. How did you do that?
Well, I think, I'm talking about, like, my postdoc years, which is more
Mhm.
than 10 years ago.
10 years,
And
yeah,
at
yeah,
that time, I mean, now it's shifting though. Now people
yeah,
are, I mean, since there are a lot of Indian students everywhere,
yeah,
people
yeah.
in Germany, I'm talking about the times when all lectures were in German.
Hmm.
Nobody was speaking any English. Now the same people are actually giving lectures in English. It
English.
never happened earlier. Okay. So when I joined, I mean, when I was, I was a DAD student during my
Hmm.
PhD,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
already had some exposure of visiting Germany and giving talks and stuff. But then when I went there as a Humboldt fellow, my supervisor, who was fluent in English,
Hmm.
I mean, he did his postdoc in the US. He told me, I don't know if it was for fun. He told me very seriously that our group meetings will be in German, since now Debbie, is in Germany. So now that I asked him about it, he said, "Did I really say that?" I said, "Yes, you did." And our group meetings like happened entirely in German. So in the beginning, I was completely frustrated because I couldn't even
Hmm.
understand what's going on. As
Yeah.
a new postdoc who just came to Germany, everybody was just discussing in German, and all scientific discussions happened in German. So I was like, okay, I'm going to miss out every damn thing,
Hmm.
And I mean, even outside it was like that. So I started, when I was in India, I was doing rock climbing and stuff. So
Hmm.
when I went there, I mean, rock climbing was, instructions were in German. If I
Wow.
don't speak German, I would probably have an accident or lose my life. I was literally forced to speak German. Yeah, I mean, there was no other option.
Option. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was doing martial arts, boxing, and stuff.
Hmm.
And you know that if you don't get the instruction right, it would be dangerous for me. So I think I quickly picked up, and I was forced to pick up. And I did more and more activities there, which I mean, not only German, but it's funny because there's something called Hochdeutsch, which is the formal German.
Hmm.
And then as soon as you go into other parts, like maybe Frankfurt, people speak Hessisch Deutsch, which is kind of
Mm.
Hochdeutsch. But when you go into, like, I was in Heidelberg, which is
Right.
Baden-Württemberg,
Mm.
and the more south you go, they start speaking these dialects, which
Dialects,
even
yeah.
Germans don't understand among each other. So now I understand even the dialects, and I can actually speak a little bit of some of the dialects. So because I got exposed to all these things, and I had to pick up very quickly. Moving to France as well. Well, France, I don't think it has changed much.
Yeah,
Everything is
yeah,
pretty much
yeah,
same, still in
exactly.
French.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say in the beginning, it's really very demotivating. If you
Mm.
just move abroad, you don't have friends and you are frustrated, you can't even talk to anyone because you don't know the language. But it's been a blessing in disguise for me, because once I became fluent in these languages, it opened doors for me.
Mm.
I learned it's not only a different culture, but it's a different way of thinking. My
Thinking,
way
yeah,
of
yeah.
thinking changed when and also I make jokes about it. So I think the way I work is German and the way I do outreach is French, because,
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
so thankfully it's not the other way around. But I would say in Germany, I mean, at that time, everything had to be very, very methodical. That's how Germany was. Now it's way different. I
Mm,
think,
mm,
uh, I mean, earlier, I'm talking about the time when German trains were on time.
mm.
Now, I
Yes,
don't know
yes.
what's going on. But yeah, so that era, everything had to be like, planned and
Mm.
everything thought out and sorted out. So this is the way I do my research. I don't leave any loopholes. So I learned to be methodical from German and, planned and everything, organized. And then when I went to France, then I learned the completely chaotic way of doing things. I mean, my work style did not change, but what I realized is how creative you can be. Even in
Yeah,
research, you can innovate, you can think of different things. Some things may work, some things may not. But I mean, I think it's very inherent for the French people to think differently.
differently. Yeah,
So that influenced me a lot. And I think talking to people in their native language, that really helped me to absorb that culture. And that influenced my way of life and my research also.
fabulous, fabulous. So, did you also take regular classes or something? Like, how did you pick up the language? I mean,
I had to take, so in both places, I had to take like 2, 3 weeks of intensive course.
course, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so this was not like, it's funny because before I left India, I never had any German or French course ever.
Is it?
Yeah, never.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that. I thought you may have some exposure before. Yeah.
No, no, no. But I would say it's actually good because
Mm,
I have interacted with people who are learning here.
mm.
And I think there's a huge difference. If you talk to people here,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
immediately can say they are not from there,
yeah.
because it's like, I don't know, even the grammar, the way the
Mm,
people actually speak and talk is very different from what you learn from the bookish way.
yeah.
Thankfully, I did not learn that. I learned it from the people itself
It's a
and
way.
talking
Yeah.
to people and interacting. So I learned the practical way.
Mm,
And this is why I could immediately start doing outreach, because it's not that, like bookish things,
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's not, yeah, it's not practical, I would say. So, yeah, so I think in the beginning, I had to take some intensive course, like 2, 3 week, which is somewhat intermediate level, I think. So they quickly go from beginner to intermediate level.
Intermediate. Yeah.
And yeah, and then I had to pick up on my own, like
Mm,
talking to people,
talk.
but again, I had people around me, so it
Mm.
was not difficult. So yeah.
That's kind of remarkable because it's not so easy, and it needs quite a bit of commitment also to really, go ahead. So one of the questions I generally ask, especially of people who have spent time and also, thought at various different places across the world, of making a decision of coming back to India. I am very sure for the kind of exposure you had and also the opportunities you had, you may have had many kind of avenues to stay back or explore other opportunities, and yet you came back to India. What really, pulled you back to India?
True. So there are actually some practical aspects and not. So I would say, so personally also, this is like this was just at the end of my third postdoc,
Mm, yeah,
and I was looking for positions, and my mother was also critically ill. So at that time, I came back to India, and I thought I will also apply here until her condition is stable, and I quickly did that. quickly heard back from IUCAA that I got this position. But also personally, I would say I was at a point, like, sorry, professionally, I was at a
Mm,
point where I was looking for something more than
mm,
what I
mm.
got. So, apart from the amazing exposure I got to different fields of research in Europe and also, science communication and different aspects, there were some limitations. In the sense, I realized, I mean, I have also talked about it, like recently Nature did an interview with me, and I've also
Yeah,
talked
yeah.
about it there, that I have faced a lot of sexism, racism,
Mm,
I mean,
mm,
good and bad aspects.
mm,
Either way. And I realized that I should go somewhere where I feel the most confident and I feel the most efficient. And India has also gone through a lot of changes in the last 10 years. I mean, when I left India to do a postdoc, is not exactly how it is now. It has evolved so much and so fast. And when I was visiting India around this time, and I came back, and I was amazed by, how efficient things are here in many administrative things, which was not the case earlier.
yeah.
And compared to Europe, I mean, where, I mean, I faced a lot of bureaucratic issues and, paperwork, which I
Mm,
got completely tired of because, I mean, every year I would have to go through this renewal process and everything, which completely ate into my research time. And then I realized that in India, I mean, the paperwork was so fast and everything was getting digitized. And, now, especially, with Blinkit and this and that, so
yeah,
everything happens in
absolutely.
a flash.
Like,
And so this is when I mean, decided to apply here. And I see that also now in India. I mean, I think we have a different working style here.
mm.
Of course, I mean, I can talk for hours about that. I don't want to do that. But I think we have a different style of working, which is a lot of jugaad and a lot
Mm.
of last minute compared to what we do
Complete.
in Europe,
Yeah.
which also gives a lot of flexibility and innovation power. And I think India is currently rising. It's really rising. And also, the point I came back to India is one when I said I was looking for something more. And this is the point when they were looking for people to contribute to LIGO India research. And LIGO
Nice.
Scientific Collaboration was also looking for somebody who's working on neutron star physics, because this is the point. 2017 was the first detection of the binary neutron star merger, and they were looking for people who are actually doing modeling. And in LIGO India outreach also, they were looking for somebody with international experience, somebody who can lead LIGO India outreach activities. So this was the point when I think I was lucky, and this was the point when I also wanted to come back. And I think this is the exposure I was looking for.
Yeah, in fact, I would anyway link the very nice interview with Debarati actually has done with Nature. It's really worth reading. In fact, I urge everybody to have a look at it. It will be in references, and it's also a very illuminating interview, Debbie, because I found that you, of course, champion science in general, and more so specifically also the women in science,
Mhm.
especially gender, to
True.
kind of broader perspective per se. And some of the things what you've actually been championing is a very important part of doing science. And you do mention that how cultural differences and other aspects also play a critical role in such things.
Definitely.
Now, it also is kind of, bringing this very broad perspective from various cultures into the science in India, which will also segue to another important initiative what you actually are part of, which is, Pint of Science, which is a kind of, it's something which people should pay more attention towards, in my opinion, because it is also kind of creating a informal setting to really take science to a broader audience. And it also is very inclusive in a way. Sometimes science is looked at as something which is isolated. In a sense, it's also sometimes looked at as ivory tower kind of pursuit. But here is an initiative what you are involved in, and you are directing it. Could you please tell us a little bit about Pint of Science and the initiatives, and also the lot of work what you people have been doing?
Thanks for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I would say I got first introduced to Pint of Science through, I mean, when I was a research ambassador in France. So I was selected as one of the ambassadors for the University of Normandy, and I was
Mm,
doing, science communication in French. And this is the point when I was, so I was 3 times speaker for Pint of Science,
Mm,
and also part of the organization once. And I was so excited to see, like, how informally and how science can be brought out of the laboratory to the general audience. And this goes a long way to inspire people. And I have been looking forward since that day to bring this to India. So
mm.
when I just moved to India, I mean, 1 month later, COVID happened. So of course, things came to a standstill. And so I have been in touch. I mean, I know the Pint of Science International
Mm,
director, and I mean, she's a friend of mine, Elodie, and we have been discussing this forever. And also, surprisingly, I mean, they had a very different view of India, which is why I think they were hesitant to introduce a new country.
mm,
Of
mm.
course, during COVID, they did not introduce, but later, 2023, when we started to discuss bringing it to India, they asked me questions like, "Oh, what is the language of communication in India?" I said,
Mm,
"Well, I think it's pretty much English." They were like, "Oh, I thought you would have to do it in vernacular
mm,
languages. Are there bars in India?" I mean, there
mm.
were questions like that.
Okay.
So, well, I had to break the myth and I gave a presentation to them. And that blew their minds. They were
Right,
like,
okay.
okay. I mean, I said there's a blooming bar scene in India. There is amazing science happening in the labs. And there is a lot of curious audience
Mm,
out here, but it's just that we need to connect the dots.
correct.
So
Yeah.
I convinced them, and they said, okay, if you are the India director, we will allow this. And
Okay.
so they gave me the green signal. And then came the practical part. So we started
Mm,
with, so I had to start like with, a fresh page, and how it
mm.
is. And also there are stigmas about bringing science to bars and
Right,
stuff.
right.
So what we started with is 3 cities, Pune, Bangalore, and New Delhi.
Mm,
We had cafes and bars
mm,
and different venues and so on. And not only that, India has such an amazing and diverse scientific environment. I was really, really excited. I mean, this was a turning point in my life, I would say. And I always thank POS, Pint of Science, for giving me this opportunity, because I came to know, I mean, as you know, being an astrophysicist, I'm in touch with the astrophysics
mm.
community.
Debarati.
But this is the exposure I got from Pint of Science, connecting with people from biology and
Mm,
chemistry and machine learning, and all the amazing stuff that's going on in academia in India. So I was so excited, like, okay, we have to tell the people about this. So luckily, I got some great speakers already in the Pint of Science, the first edition. And this was a complete experiment. Like,
mm.
and when I went to bars and I said, we are doing the science talk on a Monday, and they looked at me and said, who's going to come on a Monday to listen to a science talk? This was where I started. And then by the end of the Pint of Science Festival, there were 10 press coverage, like
Coverage, yeah,
10
yeah.
leading newspapers in India doing massive, coverage of our festival, saying that this is changing the science scene in India. And then it went viral. Right now, I think there's one event going on every day in every city.
Every day, yeah.
So I'm amazed by that. But Pint of Science is also very special because we pay particular attention to diversity, inclusion. We try to keep the gender ratio, in mind. We try to keep the different. I mean, we could do astrophysics talks because they are quite exciting,
Yeah.
but we try to, give exposure to less known fields in
Fields, yeah.
research. Even string theory can be talked
Mm,
about, and
yeah.
it's amazing. And the way we do it, like through jargons and memes and
Mm.
stuff, so even children can, get excited
Get
about it.
it.
So last time we had mothers bringing their kids to our festival to, tell them how exciting science is. So I think that was the point when I was really satisfied that we are doing the right thing. And also, I have had interactions with several university directors who have told me that we are coming into this very dark era where students are only opting for, there are 10 departments for AI ML and zero for architecture. Only one person signed up for architecture. How are we going to build houses in the future?
Mm,
So this is the point I realized POS can also play a role in this, because highlighting science and its various aspects and why we need it in the society is very important, because otherwise people read in the newspapers, whatever is the trend and go after it. We need to give exposure to what's, important and how much great science is happening in India. So we also don't like bring in suddenly a speaker from US and give a
mm.
talk. We highlight the local research that's
Research.
going on that people don't know about. So I think this is great platform for people to, come out and tell the world about what's happening in current research in India.
Such an important initiative. In fact, I'll also be linking a lot of specific, sites, including an Instagram page of Pint of Science, which is very active. I urge a lot of people to actually go and look up, which is also a very important initiative because public domain science is very much needed in India. It's going on now, but there is a perception that science is only an activity which school children do, which is not at all correct because, of course, school children are already, in favor of doing science. If anything, it's the adults who have to really, who have to also, start appreciating how important scientific thinking is and also pursuit of science itself is. And in that direction, Point of Science actually is a very important initiative. It also brings in an urban touch to doing science and gives a perspective that it's not very science is not always too serious. That is another thing, right? Because you know that very well. Sometimes the
Right.
perception is that you hole up yourself in an isolated place and do not
Exactly. I
interact.
mean, as a scientist, right, we have all these eureka moments sitting in front
Yeah.
of our computer, and we wish we could tell the world, but we don't have anyone to tell it to. I think that's the place where you can go and tell
Yeah.
people, and people will actually appreciate how amazing research you are doing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's so satisfying for the speakers themselves. And another thing I'm really excited about is that it is spreading across India. So now, along with these big metros, we have places like Guwahati, which are coming in. And
Wow,
I should
nice.
know that, it's very important to highlight also the research that's going on in different parts of India.
Much. Yeah.
So people know about some big institutes, but there's also a lot of great research happening in small universities.
Universities. Yeah.
And people need to highlight that. So I think we are going a long way to bring all this together.
Where do you get energy to do all these things?
I
That's an important part, right? Because I being a fellow scientist, I know that it's not a very easy thing to really handle everything because uh, there are so many other commitments. Because research is itself a very very kind of a full time kind of a commitment you have to put in. Of course, teaching will be also there, part mentoring, which you have a very active research group, which also does a lot of interesting work. Because I'll also be linking some of the stuff what Debbie and her group are looking at, which is very fabulous. I would urge people to look at it. How do you really manage? That's an important part of any scholar who has to actually learn from this kind of managing time, resource, etc.
True, true. I think time and resource management plays a
Yeah.
very important role. Although I'm not saying I do a great job, sometimes I do tend to neglect something because a deadline has come up, and my priority
Guilty
list.
as charged.
Every day I think, okay, what's the priority today? And I have to keep shifting that. But I would say that I think my point of motivation is the people around me. I mean, I cannot give up because of the enthusiasm I have from the people who support me. I mean, whether it's my students, so I have a group of 6, 7 PhD students, and even when they see that I am not able to give them the time I want, and I'm doing these other initiatives, they would go the distance to try and make up the gap, and maybe look more into devote some more time and close in the gap. So that helps a lot. They are very hardworking, and we work as a team and as a family, so this is great. And also the same thing with initiatives like LIGO India Outreach
Yeah, yeah.
or Pint of Science. So I think if you have talked to people in my teams, or people who do my interns who work with me, so I think we just what I do as a Pint of Science director or LIGO India EPO chair is I need to guide and encourage these people. I think there's so much amazing talent in India. This is underrated. The way talent is there in India, I mean, what I need to do is just show them the direction and encourage them to come up with their own, let's say, to find their way. And they come up and do stuff better than me. better than I had expected. So yeah, I think it's the motivation and passion also of these young
Right.
students. I mean, I think the youth in India have so much energy to
Energy.
do so much, and that motivates me a great deal. And of course, I mean, we also have the veterans who also motivate us and show the way. I mean, I was lucky enough to like chat with Naresh all the time, who passed away recently, and he
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
always like pulling us back on track if we complain
Mm.
like, oh, we are always under deadlines and we are not able to do. So he was like, yeah, Debbie, don't run in the rat race. Leave that and, think
Think.
and do fundamental physics. So, yeah, I think, I'm very motivated by people around me to
Absolutely.
support me
You
with this.
know, the IUCAA is a magnificent place. It has a rich history of science communication and, doing cutting edge science. That's the amazing part. In fact, that's something
Yeah,
which, down from the legacy of Professor Narlikar all the way to T. Padmanabhan. Unfortunately, both of them are not around, and
right,
Professor Naresh also is no more. But that legacy is actually been continued by people like
right,
Devi and so many other fantastic people in IUCAA and
right.
NCRA too. In fact, that is another place which is also doing very interesting work and other
And
things.
ICER.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have
I
had the
said,
chance
yeah,
to
that
interact with ICER because of Pint of Science.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
guys
In
are doing
fact,
a great job.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In fact, it's a good grouping of institutions in Pune. Pune has this very rich intellectual history. That's probably one of the best parts of being in Pune. Not only just science, there's so much of literally the history, social history, political history,
Sure.
economics, and so many other things. And of course, a lot of interesting music and art is so big here. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
And
great
this is
place.
this is something that motivates me. Like we have the National Science Day coming up.
Yeah, yeah.
I am amazed by the enthusiasm
Enthusiasm.
of the volunteers who just turn up. I remember when I just came to Pune, the first thing I did was attend National Science Day.
Yes,
That was
science. Yeah.
exactly when I had joined. And heard some students talking about neutron stars with so much, enthusiasm, and they were accurate, they were correct. And I said, oh, are you doing your PhD on this? And he said, no, I'm just a volunteer. So I
Wow.
was amazed by the amount of hard work they put into the presentations and the model building and everything. I mean, the enthusiasm for astrophysics and physics in general. I mean, I think Pune has a great environment for it.
Environment. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with
Ferguson
you. I agree with
College,
you. Yeah.
Ferguson College and
Ferguson
Pune
College also,
University,
exactly.
amazing, amazing.
University, Ferguson College, Agarkar Institution, of course,
ITWU.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And also, there's a wonderful Gokhale Institute of Economics and Politics, if I'm correct in the acronym. And
Right.
there are so many important institutions across this particular place. So, my penultimate question is. What are the kind of future plans you have? Because there are so many interesting things which are happening both in the research front and also in your science communication front. What are the things which you are looking at in a broader context?
I think, yeah, I think I gave you the idea that after moving to France, I stopped planning. I stopped planning because, I mean, I mostly go with the flow. And another reason is that I let life lead me, I would say,
Nice, nice.
because every time I meet people, it opens doors for me. I think even the India Science Festival I went to at ICER, I met so many amazing people. Every conference, every Pint of Science Festival, I meet more and more fantastic people, and it brings up lot of people. Even meeting science communicators opens up new avenues.
Oh, yes.
So I think, of course, I mean, I want to explore even more, multidisciplinary science, even more science communication, different aspects of it. But something that I lost a little bit of touch with is I'm trying to get back to is the artistic side that I had.
Uh-huh.
So I had been exploring a lot of, art and science, and this took a little bit of a backstage.
Vaccine. Yeah.
And although this again needs a lot of time,
Mm,
but
mm,
I'm trying to, let's see if I can manage time to, explore some of this a little bit more. And also, I did neglect my health
mm.
in the last couple of years, because I had been, even till 2022, I was very deeply into, mountaineering and
Mm.
rock climbing and stuff. I did Everest Base Camp trek and Great Lakes
Wow.
trek in the same year. And but because of both of them, I had some high altitude health issues, high
Health issue.
altitude
Okay.
sickness issues, which, I mean, I did not suffer much from, but then I took a little bit of step back, and
Mm,
this
mm,
I think ruined my health, because until then I kept my fitness level very high.
mm.
And then I said, okay, I'm going to give myself a bit of space. And now my friends who are mountaineers make fun of me and say, so you realize that you cannot take a break from the mountains. So
Sure.
I do realize that now, because once you take a break, it's very difficult to get back to the health condition.
Yes.
So the past couple of years, I had many issues. Like was on biological injections, and
Oh.
I was on so I had spinal
Mm,
problems and this
mm.
and that. And I think it has to do as much with stress and also too many
Yeah.
activities which I'm
Yeah.
trying to juggle, which also eats up into your work life balance,
Work
because
life.
you're
Yeah.
not eating at the right time. I have there are days which when I have Zoom calls from 9:30 a.m., which is in sync with Australia time, and 9:30 p.m., which is US time. So I think sometimes I don't eat properly and so on. So I this was a wake up call for me that I need to take care of my health and work life balance. So
Very
this is
important.
something I want to pay attention to now.
Very important. Very crucial. And I'm very sure you'd be back to your normal, and you'd be able to do a lot of activities. So the final question is, uh, a person who is interested in, let's say, doing science and science and communication, there is no better person for them to go and ask Professor Chatterjee about how to go about doing this. It's a very important part, because India is also in a situation where the science and scientific thinking actually has to blossom for further, for various different reasons, economic, social, and other reasons. And since you are so deeply invested in this, what is your general advice to an young person who would want to take this route?
You mean science communication?
Science communication, science, scientific research, scientific communication, anything related to science.
So I would say we are actually living in amazing times when science is booming in so many directions. On one hand, if you're looking at, um, uh, whether it's biology, whether
Mm.
it's marine biology, whether it's environment, there's so much to
So
do.
much.
Even in astrophysics, just talking about it, there are tons of telescopes which are out there scanning the sky across wavelengths. You have gravitational wave science. I mean, imagine we just celebrated the 10th anniversary,
Anniversary,
the
yeah.
first detection, and now we have 400 detection. It has become an
Amazing.
everyday story. So we are really lucky. And imagine Einstein died not seeing
Seeing
gravitational
that,
waves. Yeah, and we are really lucky that all this is booming, and there's artificial intelligence, and there are a
yeah.
lot of many avenues. But what I want to say is that don't follow trends. I mean, I want to tell young people, because every field is as interesting and there is as much prospect if you put your heart and mind into it. So what following trends does is it increases competition unnecessarily in certain aspects, and it lets other fields die down. So I think
Mm.
this is very important to follow your own instincts as to what you enjoy and do something that is your own passion. I'm sure if people are invested in it, then I mean, research is amazing. Whether it's a startup, that is also amazing. But
Amazing.
I think people really need to do that passionately. And the same with science communication. I think if you are excited about the science you are doing, then I mean, it is very important also to tell the world about it. I know that we don't grow up in India with science communication skills, because
Yes.
other
Yeah.
countries have training on science communication. I'm also trying in small ways to introduce this.
Very
Uh,
nice.
but I hope that, this culture will slowly come into India, where people will get equipped with the necessary tools to do that science communication. Because the words we write down in a thesis are not the words we can use when we are in a broader audience. So I think learning that is also important. But I think we are, going into that era when people need to look into this. So there's a lot. I would just give out this message that there are so many different fields to explore for particularly for young students. They should educate themselves and explore everything, and then come to a point, not just reading newspapers and thinking this is where the jobs are and that is where the prospects are.
Fabulous. Fabulous. So, this is something I am assuming that a lot of young people would be looking forward to, because
Right.
there's a great opportunity. There's also a career opportunity here. and
Definitely.
it's a great service to humanity, so to speak, in a broader
Yes.
sense too.
And
It's
if I
a
can advertise a little bit, so
yes,
again, the kind of outreach I do, so LIGO India, and there are many other mega science projects that are coming to India,
yeah,
which are opening also the career opportunities in diverse fields,
mm,
and also for young students who don't know what are the blooming avenues in science and what is the cutting edge research happening. Come to the Pint of Science Festival and find out
yes,
for yourself what,
yeah.
and interact with the researchers and find out what are the possibilities in these fields.
Yeah, I would also be linking all the links related to both Point of Science and also Professor Debbie's research group webpage and her own webpage, where you can find more information on all these aspects. And do explore. This is something which is very important. And this is the time to really, take science, seriously, and also in a lighter way too. It's something which is very important. So yeah, I thank you, Debbie, for this wonderful conversation. It's been illuminating, and also, it's very nice to actually know that dedicated scientists also put a lot of time and effort in communicating science. Because I know it's a hard, it's not a hard, it's not a very easy task to put yourself outside into the public domain, and also do cutting edge research in a rigorous way, because it takes a different kind of perspective on both ends. And I thank you for all the initiatives what you've taken, and wish you all the best for a lot of ventures, including the great initiative of Pint of Science. And it's great actually learning a lot about your activities.
Thank you very much. So also the initiatives like this one, you are doing a fantastic job at it, and also goes on to motivate people like
People.
us who are trying out these different efforts. So thank you very much for having me on your podcast. And yeah, I think it was a great pleasure to have a chat with you. It made me introspect about my own journey and my initiatives. So I thank you for that.
Power of conversations.
Yeah, I think exchanging ideas is
Yeah.
very important when you come to research. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you very much. This is Pratidwani, where we try to humanize science, this time with the one and the only Debarati Chatterjee. Thank you, Debarati. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.